Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. We will have the Senator joining in not too long to go over some of the Patriots' offensive woes and some of the explosiveness that they might be lacking. But I bring in my guy, Taylor Kyles from CLNS. You know, there's so many young guys on the beat who do an outstanding job, and I love to be able to, even though I'm like 30 years in, walk over to people and say, did I see what I thought I saw? And they can correct me, and Taylor has been that for me, so I appreciate you.
Appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for having me.
What did you see? I want that mic closer to your mouth.
Yes, sir.
All right.
I'm learning.
See? This was a 180 from what we saw Wednesday from the Patriots, and I really thought that it started from jump. What did you see from the Patriots offense, first of all?
Well, first, the red zone efficiency. Obviously, that was an area they struggled early on when they first started the offseason program and training camp. Kind of tough going against a great defense. Yesterday, we did see a touchdown to Devontae Parker in tight coverage, a good throw from Mack, but there wasn't a lot of consistency in that area. Today, saw a lot more of that. Receivers were winning. Mack was putting it on guys. We saw guys like Kendrick Bourne was winning, Devontae Parker, Demario Douglas actually had a few wins. There was one where we noticed where he spun the ball and a Packers player actually came over and kicked it. So clearly they were getting under the Green Bay skin a little bit, but it was really good to see them bounce back in that regard. And then later on we saw during a 2-minute drill. Now really in team drills we saw pressure constantly an issue for the Patriots offense. Today we did still see pressure kind of creep up. A couple times where Mack probably would have been sacked, a lot of short throws, but then lo and behold, he uncorks a deep bomb to Devontae Parker, contested touchdown, sideline went wild, cleared the bench, everybody was really jazzed up, and that's what you want to see because there's some issues on this offense, but those bright spots are what you can start to build on.
They were so bereft of any kind of explosive plays on Wednesday, and we talked about it on TV, we talked about it on the sidelines as we watched it. Look, you can't keep throwing the ball into space sideways when you don't have explosive players who make people miss. But today we did see more pressed downfield throws, and it was impressive. Hunter Henry had a downfield reception. The Devontae Parker catch was outstanding. We also saw a Tyquan Thornton catch, which unfortunately may have led to him leaving practice, but it was a full-on hands diving catch that he made, which was impressive. Easily his best play of the offseason right now. You also mentioned how into it everyone was. This was a fracas, brouhaha-laden session today, and one guy, it happened frequently during special teams, and also between the offense and defense of the Packers and the Patriots defense. Really, they came out much more energized, much more emotional, almost committed, it seemed, to say, you know what, we kind of got our asses kicked and petered out in the second portion of practice on Wednesday. Today, we're going to be into it. And they were, I really think this was a great bonding practice table.
Absolutely, yeah. And the funniest part was you saw Jabrill Peppers. Now, usually we've seen him, he's a pretty chill guy, you know, well-spoken, really just like a leader. And people have mentioned that. He's really starting to learn his role on the team. But it was funny because he was going back and forth with Jair Alexander constantly. He was not stopping talking on the sideline. And actually before the play that we mentioned where there was the bomb to Devontae Parker, you saw those two jawing at each other, talking something about college. I don't know, we can't talk about what's going on the field. But there was clearly something going on there. And then the play after that, the Patriots score. So clearly there was a lot more energy. Guys, like you said, were feeling it. It was fun to be out there, to be honest with you.
The touchdown was not on Jair Alexander, but Jabrill Peppers popped off the sideline and made sure to get directly in Jair Alexander's face and give him the on your head motion several times, which Jair thought was awesome. When we look at this practice overall and what we saw, Bailey Zappi struggled tremendously in the 2-minute. We saw a number of throwaways, but he eventually settled in, had a completion, then a touchdown completion to Kayshon Boutte. And during that touchdown celebration, we saw Ezekiel Elliott off the bench, into the scrum, really into it.
Yeah.
What were your impressions of Zeke Elliott today? Because I thought it was a little eye-opening how much time he spent out there.
Definitely, yeah. So yesterday he didn't participate in any competitive drill. So today, kind of figured it would be the same as he learns the offense, especially with Green Bay. They're trying to learn too. So you want to stick to the script, make sure things are clean. Today he was heavily involved. Had a few touchdowns in red zone periods where he was popping guys, standing up defenders who tried to tackle him. And you did see he really seemed like he was in the mix with his teammates. He was passionate. You saw running back coach Vinny Sinceri give him love constantly when when he got to the sideline. And then players mentioned even after practice that he really is going to fit in really well with this team. He's going to be a quick learn on this squad. And you saw he learned from Belichick on his way over here, the protections, terminology, and whatnot. So clearly he's putting in the effort. And it was nice to see that he was kind of confident, felt more comfortable. And on the field, I thought he really did look like that 1-2 punch with Ramondre that I think fans are hoping he can be.
You know what? Good point by you. Let's lob to sound from Matthew Judon talking about Ezekiel Elliott. Bone crusher, skull crusher, put this in. I usually call my guy skull crusher, but I just gave him a bone crusher. Skull crusher.
Synonyms.
Drop in the Judon sound, will you?
Zeke, I knew him before, so I know he's going to come in, buy in, fit in the system, and he's gonna be him.
As for developments during practice, we saw Keon White go down. We also saw Tyquan Thornton have that diving catch leave the field. Keon was a concern because he was down for a period of time, but he did walk off under his own power, didn't take part anymore after that. Any other news and notes that we should be highlighting here that I'm missing as we finish, and I haven't gone through all my notes?
Well, one thing I'll say, the injuries, I was mostly focused on offense, so I can't get too into the weeds on defense. But one thing, as you mentioned, after the catch, you're saying horizontally, can't really do that when you don't have guys who can make a play afterwards. I will say Demario Douglas had a couple plays where he was underneath and then did that little juke he tends to do where he makes guys miss after. Really exciting stuff from him. Now, it wasn't a huge day or anything. He didn't have the downfield catches that you'd expect from someone with his speed, but in this offense, I think his role is going to be more that underneath guy. We saw it also, that short area quickness in the red zone, as I said, led to some touchdowns, and the after the catch stuff, that's really exciting because I'm not sure they have a guy who they can really rely on to be that, kind of Julian Edelman type where they can win in that capacity. Demario Douglas, stock continues to rise.
Unbelievable contributions, and there was a point at which one of Demario's teammates may or may not have uttered the words, "There's not an MFer on that roster that can guard you," and that was just before the Boutte touchdown. But they guarded him, and Boutte got some time. Great stuff. Thanks for being
Thank you,
here.
Appreciate you.
We'll bring Phil in just a minute. Hey, football season is about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time that team wins in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. You can use bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/NSBO and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/NSBO.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Hope is here. GamblingHelplineMA.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support, Massachusetts. Call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 New York. 21 plus in present and select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Tennessee, or Virginia. 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona. 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana. 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas. 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit www.mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming or visit www.1800gambler.net in West Virginia.
As advertised, we have a guy with sweaty palms and itchy skin. He's going through Patriots. We're all back there in Boston. Don't worry, Phil. You'll be out in the Tennessee, the wilds of Nashville next week to chronicle those joint practices. We had planned, my guy, to talk about the lack of explosive plays. And even though one practice doesn't cure all ills, I think this work today kind of changes our conversation a bit.
No question. It sounds like they couldn't be stopped out there offensively. Explosive plays to Tyquan Thornton. I saw Devontae Parker with a 2-minute touchdown deep down the field that basically emptied the Patriots bench like it was an Adam Vinatieri last second field goal in Super Bowl 36. I mean, like unbelievable. So tell us about it. I mean, I know you and Kyle just went through the details, but is this the kind of thing? Here's what I want to ask you, because you've seen a lot of these joint practices, and I think they're important. And I do think this time of year is the time of year when you can establish some confidence, and I know Bill Belichick hates this word, but a little bit of swagger when you start to see things come together against another team. And this has been a good team over the years. I know Aaron Rodgers isn't there anymore. But Matt LaFleur seems to have a pretty good program there, and they should be at least an average football team this year, Tom, in my opinion. So is this the kind of thing that can carry over into the regular season?
This could be a watershed moment for the team. And it could also be just lightning striking and the Green Bay Packers saying, whatever, we won Wednesday, have fun with Thursday. But Bill Belichick had a very long, Phil, kind of come to Jesus huddle with the Patriots, I thought, after the session on Wednesday. He had a little bit of a bubble up with Mac Jones after a mistake. There was a parade of penalties on Wednesday. And I really think that I gave them a C-, but the latter portion of the practice was D-. So I really think that they made a concerted effort to be more aggressive, enthusiastic, engaged, and on their details. And as a result, this was as good a day as it could be. As Matt Judon and Jalen Mills told us after the practice, you're building. It's okay. Everybody gets a gold star for today. They're not going to put up a banner in the end zone. Said one practice against the Packers handily on August 17th. That's not going to go up. But, we have seen watershed practices over the course of time. I think that you observed one down the Greenbrier, or maybe it was in Atlanta, Phil. I think that the Giants practice in 2021 was kind of a watershed one for Mac Jones. I remember the way the Patriots absolutely dismantled the Washington Redskins at the time, Commanders, correcting, I like to say that old nickname, dismantled them in 2014 and just showed a level of disorganization of the Washington Commanders that was appalling. And the Patriots were just on point. The Philadelphia Eagles joint practice, I think you and I were both sitting there when there was scraps. Remember that? The Aaron Dobson scraps, Phil?
I do. That was when the Eagles weren't a great team, really, right? And it was sort of interesting to see how tight and competitive that was at times.
Yeah, and the Patriots use these joint practices, I think, in many ways to kind of establish an identity. The scrapping, though, was an interesting thing to observe during this practice. Phil, I want you to hear Matt Judon talking about the prevalence of, there were legitimate 6 fisticuffs. There were probably 6 different frat guy. And here's Judon on the scrapping.
Matthew, you're no stranger to these joint practices. When you watched the film last night, did you expect it to get a little tricky today?
No. I expected we like we did. We came out here to get better. I believe Green Bay wanted to get better, and I believe the Patriots wanted to get better. We don't put gloves on for a living. Like we know boxers, we know no fighters. We came out here to get better and improve in our craft. And if any of that would have happened during the game, we all would have been kicked out. We'd been playing with like 17 players, right? So you can't, that stuff can't happen. You got to be a professional about it, and we came here to play football, and that's what we eventually got to.
There was a point at which David Bakhtiari went up to Bill Belichick and said, it's not fight night out here, it's football practice. And Belichick and Bakhtiari kind of exchanged notes as veterans of the National Football League. They weren't scrapping in any way, but it was an observation by Bakhtiari. But this will lead into, I think, an interesting week next week in Tennessee, because as much as the two men respect each other, Vrabel and Belichick, I'm sure that they're similar style teams, right, Phil? And they're extremely competitive men at the top of the totem poles.
Extremely competitive men at the top of the totem poles. And I think where maybe Tennessee will bring something that Green Bay doesn't is outside of, David Bakhtiari, Jair Alexander. It's a really young Packers team. And I know they play in Green Bay. I don't, at this point, consider them a really tough team. But that's what Mike Vrabel's going to have. And, Danico Autry and, Kyle Pecco and Jeffrey Simmons and Kevin Byard. And, they've got a lot of veterans that are going to be tough. And I think the Patriots should get I don't think the Titans are a great team either. I think they might even be, I call the Packers an average team. on BST. And that's why I think it's sort of a good litmus test this week of where the Patriots are. If you kind of fought them to a draw this week, then, maybe you're looking like kind of an average team, which isn't the worst thing in the world. It sounds like after today, you might give them the victory after 2 days of practice. And so that's good. That's trending in the right direction. Tennessee, I don't think is a very good team, but I do think they'll be tough. And so if this stuff bleeds into next week, the Titans are going to be ready to answer the bell in that way. No question.
Got to be honest. The hooting and hollering and carrying on after successful plays that the Patriots engaged in was wonderful to watch and enjoyable as hell for the Patriots players to engage in. That's not going to fly against a Vrabel team. I mean, you can't have 70 players jumping up and down after a completion to Kayshon Boutte from Bailey Zappi with Packers players trying to get out of that scrum to get back to their huddle. It was that. And there was a point at which request was made by Belichick to, can we get these guys back on the sideline and see if they can stop running their mouths? Bill was enjoying it, but I think that he was, okay, we're starting to poke the bear a little too much here. But an identity, I think, is being forged. And that's something that Jalen Mills talked about today with what this team has been about. And we've talked about using Matthew Slater as a jumping off point. You have to declare who you're going to be and how you're going to be. And Matthew Slater, in talking about forging the identity, talked about being situationally smart, something Jabrill Peppers talked about. Listen to Jalen Mills, kind of a longish answer to two different questions. And the latter part to the question I posed, I think, is kind of encouraging because it talks about when the going gets tough and the agitation level rises, the guys are locking in more and not just running around trying to take heads off. Jalen Mills.
We've been talking about since OTAs, trying to establish our identity. And I mean, when we first came out, practice was a little flat, and then eventually ended up building up. And I think just being competitive, being safe as well is kind of what we want to be.
What did you learn about the team's identity today that you didn't know prior to today, the 2023 team?
I mean, when things get edgy, when things get chippy, the mental errors, they kind of go away. Guys are actually locked in, and I mean, that's what you want. Sometimes you have those times where, it may get a little chippy, guys are talking noise here and there, and, guys can't think. They just want to go out there and just hit the first thing they see, but still executing at a high level and doing what each and every play allows you to do.
I have a question for you. Devin McCourty and Jawan Bentley, and I think to a large extent, Dietrich Wise tend to be, I think, but especially Bentley and McCourty, the guys with their hands on the rudder. Well, McCourty's gone now. And Jabrill Peppers and Jalen Mills, talked about it at the top with Taylor Kyles. Jabrill Peppers is a blast, but he runs hot. He's more chungy in the McCourtian. So what do you think Jabrill Peppers brings to this team? I thought he was their most violent and Rodney Harrison kind of player last year on defense.
I agree with you there, especially, late in the year, because he was still sort of coming back from a knee injury earlier in the year. That's how he explained it to me earlier this offseason when I sort of was asking a little bit about last year. I think this is the kind of guy that Bill Belichick loves. There's a reason, Joe Judge liked him as much as he did with the Giants, was because he is an old school football player. He wants to hit you. He wants to be violent out at practice. A situation like this one in the joint practices, I think, brings out the best in somebody like Jabrill Peppers. And they need guys like him to help forge that identity, especially with McCourty now gone. I think you need, as great as some of these leaders, established leaders that they have, I think are in that role. You mentioned them, Jawan Bentley, Dietrich Wise, even David Andrews. They're all, I think, willing to mix it up. But I think you do need a handful of guys that are aggressive, violent, not afraid to let you know how tough they are. And that can spill over to the rest of the locker room. I think that's what Peppers brings. I think that's part of the reason why he is a valuable player. I think he's good in terms of the X's and O's, Tom, no question, but I think you need that other stuff as part of your football team as well.
And a player that I think has to learn from Peppers is Jack Jones, who I think a lot of the players really like and then want to develop, and he is into it. For a guy who's going through the stuff he's going through, he certainly doesn't shrink from contact. not that that's a big thing. He certainly doesn't shrink from being a focal point of aggressiveness, noise, and combativeness on the field. So I guess the point I'm making is, at the end of last season, he was a pain in the ass enough to get suspended. This offseason, he has got himself, for all the wrong reasons, in the attention of not only the media, but I'm sure the team and his teammates. He has not tapered or tempered his attitude in one iota. He, after the Jabrill Peppers hooting and hollering, was just standing there screaming before a play on the outside of the huddle. Just primal screams. But he was very productive today in a way that he was not on Wednesday. So that's an observation to add to you, for you listeners, and for Phil to chew on. You got to be able to do what Jalen Mills is talking about. Get agitated, but not take it over the line.
So Jack Jones wasn't yelling at anyone. He was just screaming into the void.
Yeah, I got room here for you folks on YouTube.
Uh-oh.
I don't know if I want to wake up the whole hotel.
Maybe turn your volume down if you're listening.
So he was big time into the upcoming second.
Wow.
And fourth.
Wow. I will say this. Can I just say one more thing? Because I made an observation recently on one of our shows.
Oh, Anthony Jennings is absolutely nuts too. He has been a walking fight, and he got tossed today.
I heard someone took a swing at Keon White, was it? And he just, Anthony Jennings just came in like the Kool-Aid guy and just threw someone out the club, essentially.
I got to be honest. I wasn't watching. I got that report, but apparently I was at the other end, folks. There's two ends. I kind of like to see that. I do kind of like to see that. You know, you want to see guys have each other's backs to a degree, and I'm okay with the celebrating. It sounds like it got a little over the top, and I'm not going to take it and say, well, this is why they are now contenders. Whereas I didn't think that, 6 hours ago. I will say this. I would rather a team celebrate starters versus starters success in a joint practice than I would celebrate a third string versus third and fourth string late in a preseason game dominant performance the way we saw from the New York Jets and Hard Knocks. Tom, I don't know if you had a chance to watch the latest episode there. It was cringy, I think is the best word to use, because Robert Saleh was so over the top celebrating sacks in the fourth quarter of the second preseason game. And we're kicking their asses and fist pumping and flexing and walking all the way out to the numbers from the sideline to celebrate with guys as the head coach. Like that is too much. It sounds like what the Patriots did today was bordering on too much, but I would rather see that than late preseason game dominance. That really means almost nothing to me. Whereas I do take something out of these joint practices. Yeah, it was definitely purpose driven by the Patriots today. I think it was purpose driven because of their performance Wednesday, because of whatever tongue lashing they must have gotten during film. And because I think the Packers, at least to hear Jabrill Peppers, toughest MFers in the league after the whistle. So they were extending some things. And Zeke Elliott, Phil, before we get to a little bit of conversation about the explosiveness, was it eye-opening to you to hear how used he was today and effective? Yeah, it was, honestly, because it feels like the move is always to really slow play it with these guys that haven't done much, but he must have impressed them with his conditioning level. He must have done something yesterday, Tom, that really told them, hey, this guy's ready to go, because it sounds like before yesterday, I mean, because the guy was flying all over the country, going from Texas to Boston to sign with the team and then fly with the team out to Green Bay, like he couldn't have done anything physical for them at that point. So he has the slower day yesterday, and then he's out there and he's used a bunch today. I'm happy that they were able to do that for him, because again, you are sort of running out of time here. You've got two padded practices left with the Titans, and maybe a competitive practice or two, even in full pads, maybe, as sort of an inter squad thing, because there's such a long break between that third preseason game and the start of the regular season. Yep. So call it 4 more really competitive practices, maybe. You want to get these guys that are actually going to have to play week 1. You want to get them out there and get them running around. So that was good for him to be able to get out there and have a little bit of success too. Yeah, it's interesting too. I mean, is he out there as much as he is this quickly because Ty Montgomery's still down? Because Pierre Strong's down? It's just, Kevin Harris is the only other depth. Would he otherwise be out there this much? Or do the Patriots say, okay, you know what? It's a former 1,600-yard rusher who can go over 2,000 yards from scrimmage. And that guy might be gone, but he's still that much better than everybody else. And if we signed Zeke 3 weeks ago now, when Ty Montgomery was still playing, we probably still would be doing this with him. We don't know, but it's really fascinating to see him out there that much. Phil, on the phone today, when you and I talked prior to practice, we got into a conversation about the explosiveness issues, and we're probably going to go deeper into this later in the preseason and prior to the season, because it's the stylistic nature of the Patriots offense and their personnel. But I have a simple question today before we go too far into it is just personnel-wise. Why in God's name can't Kendrick Bourne be a more featured player after in 2021 catching 55 of the 70 balls that went to him? I mean, I have it memorized. Going for 800 yards. I think he averaged like 10 yards per carry on not an insignificant number of carries. I think it was 10 carries for 100 yards. He's there. That's your explosive guy. That's your run after the catch guy. I'm not saying he needs to be Tyquan Thornton or Devontae Parker. But that's your guy. You say, get the ball in his hands and let him go to work.
The only reason I would say maybe he's not that guy and he isn't built up enough momentum to be that guy just yet for them this summer is he's had just these little sort of in the margins kinds of mistakes. He's had a couple drops. He's had a couple penalties, the types of things that would, I think, cause Bill Belichick to say, well, has he done anything to really knock Devontae Parker or Juju Smith-Schuster from our top two here? Those guys are going to be our primary guys. And then, if Kendrick can figure out a role for himself, then great. I'm sure Bill Belichick would love for Kendrick Bourne to be so good that it forces him to get on the field in more regular situations. And maybe Mike Gesicki's injury, Tom, maybe there's a silver lining there for Kendrick Bourne. It gets him more reps, more targets, more catches in practice, leads to more confidence, leads to a better player, because he is somebody that I think is fueled by positive results. And last year being last year, he obviously didn't have any of those. You, by the way, had Kendrick Bourne's stats down to a T. The only thing you missed slightly on, although you had the average perfect, 12 carries for 125, a 10.4 average. He can be an explosive. Tom, they were top 5 in explosive play rate. So not sheer counting stats, number of explosive plays, but they were top 5 an explosive play rate in the run game and the pass game during Mac Jones's rookie season. And I know they got fat on the Jaguars and they got fat on the Browns and the Jets, but their personnel is maybe better now. Jacoby Myers led them in receiving that year, 866 yards, 10.4 per catch. Bourne was 14.5 per catch. Aguilar was...
Like, listen to that yards per catch. It's 14.5, ladies and gentlemen, for a guy who was featured a fair amount and is not Tyreek Hill. Go ahead.
And now I think you have an upgrade going from Nelson Aguilar, who 13 yards per catch in 2021, to Devontae Parker. Can he stay on the field? Can he be more consistent? But Devontae Parker, Tom, was among qualifiers, guys with as many targets essentially as Parker had last year. He was 4th in the NFL in yards per catch.
I know.
And I'm sure if you and I were sitting here talking to Bill Belichick and saying, Bill, you got to find out, you might be able to run the ball with these two guys, but you got to get more explosive. You look, Devontae Parker's not an explosive receiver. How many guys are more explosive than he is on a per catch basis? And
I don't know, Bill. Maybe he did it all in one friggin' game where you get your quarterback hurt against the Ravens. I mean, he was 5 catches for 150 yards, I think, that game.
But he'd make that argument in a quiet moment. He would make that argument to you. Hey, we got a guy who runs a 4.2. I mean, there's not many guys faster in the league than Tyquan Thornton. I mean, we have the ability to be explosive. So you watch. So the potential is there. If you can get coordination the way you got it in 2021 with Josh McDaniels, I mean, to take that group
it's
of
coordination. That's such a good point. It's coordination. So are they laying in the weeds a little bit? Like the shit that I'm seeing when they're in when they were doing 11 on 11s, non-situational stuff the last 2 days, and Thursday was sublime. But with the motions and the anticipation, it was probably a B on Wednesday, and it was like an A+ today. Like how dominant they were. I mean, Demario Douglas couldn't be covered as usual, but are they lying in the weeds a little bit with some of this motion stuff? And because they haven't done as much of it with Demario Douglas in the normal 11-on-11 when the whole teams are gathered together. So
I think they could be. To answer your question, I mean, we're talking about explosive play rate with Josh McDaniels in 2021 with a average or below average group of personnel and a rookie quarterback, by the way. Could they do that again in 2023? I think it's in the realm of possibility. Now, again, is that getting fat on a couple of bad defenses? Maybe somewhere in there, sure. But I'm sure a lot of top 10 offenses scoring wise have those kinds of games where they put up 50 in a random week. So to answer your question, are they lying in the weeds? I think they could be. Are they good enough and talented enough to beat a great defense in a big game? That I don't think any of us could say with any kind of confidence until it actually happens.
Also important to note that the things we talked about on Wednesday were still present on Thursday. Not the penalties, but it's still Antonio Mafi. And who's my other guy, Phil?
Riley Reif at guard.
City Sau, Riley Reif, all the same guys who just were underwhelming a couple of days ago and who we also say, look, they're not good enough to go into the season with two rookies on their offensive line starting, and Riley Reif perhaps. So this was not a silver bullet. This was not a cure-all. This is not book your tickets. Where's the Super Bowl this year? Vegas?
Vegas, baby, Vegas.
This is not. I bet you'd do a good Vince Vaughn. I don't want to talk about Pop Douglas. We do too much already. He's just ridiculous, though. We'll do it later. We'll do some over-unders for the season when it gets more reasonable.
But I like that.
I'll tell you. Remember our over-unders on Dalton Keene and Devin Asiasi?
Well, I think Dalton Keene's going to have 45 catches, but you're going to have Asiasi at around 38.
Okay, Tom. Nailed it. Clown show. All right. Phil, I'm going to let you go because we're now going to toss to some sound from Jelani Tavai, Patriots linebacker, who had an impassioned plea on behalf of the folks in Hawaii who are dealing with those brutal and tragic fires that have been really just sweeping in that island. So Jelani Tavai gave an impassioned post-practice plea for folks to help in any way they can. So we'll leave you with Jelani Tavai, and we will talk to you again after the game on Saturday night for a quick emergency post-game aftermath pod.
I know you guys want to talk about football right now, and I'm going to answer those questions. But right now I just want to take the time to allow people out there to remind them that things are going bad out there in Hawaii. I'm not sure if people are watching the news, but there was a big fire, and I know plenty of people that were affected by that, by those fires, people who lost homes, people who lost family members, friends. And I know a lot of people have been asking our media, myself included, on how they can help and support. And I can finally be able to present that. And one way that people out there, especially our fans, can help is by donating to families that are in need directly. On my Instagram, on my social media, I have a link on my bio that literally shows all the families that are going through this struggle, and I know a lot of my teammates and myself have done our best to donate as much as we could, and I just ask that anybody in the world right now who's watching, out of the kindness of their hearts, to give. These places, such as if you go on hawaiiancouncil.org Maui, the Native Hawaiian Advancement Group, for every dollar that you donate, they're matching, which is a great thing, and I'm excited that they're doing that. There's the Maui Strong Fund, the Nawahine Toa Foundation, and then there's other ways that you can help as well with small businesses, small Hawaiian businesses. The Hawaiian community out there is struggling right now, especially with, like I said, their families gone and their land gone. And myself, since I was out there, my lady, my dad's from there. We're doing our best to, just try and put a smile on our face for the next days. So if anybody has more questions on that, I'm more than happy to answer those. But again, I'm just grateful that you guys are giving me the time to spread this news out there.